Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for Overtime. We've got some interesting, we've got a lot to discuss. Tomorrow at noon, actually, we're going to have MythVision on to discuss addiction. I've been looking forward to that show. I think that's going to be a good one. And then also tomorrow at 9 p.m., Nate the Lawyer will be on to discuss federal level mask mandate. Is it legal? Is there any precedent for it? What are the pros and cons? And can it be done? Now, he's already discussed this at length on his channel. We'll provide the links. It's definitely worth getting his view on. If we have time, I think there's a couple others. He's made some waves talking about the women's soccer team and pay equity. So we will certainly try to fit that in and anything else that you guys want to know about while we have him. It's always a pleasure to have Nate on. So looking forward to that. Now, yesterday, North Korea fired at least one ballistic missile. It claims that these were that this was a hypersonic weapon. It actually claims to have fired two. We can confirm one was fired, and it certainly didn't behave like a hypersonic weapon. So who knows? If they have them, they got them from China, who has now successfully demonstrated that they have built these weapons. We are attempting to build our own hypersonic weapon, and the objective is to have it completed by October 2022. Because these are essentially first strike weapons that are fast enough and nimble enough to avoid any kind of defense and to strike so quickly that it's actually within the window before the president could even be notified, this is going to dramatically change how we view our nuclear deterrence system and the balance of power, nuclear power, overall. So we're working on that. We want to make sure we get all the facts straight. So it's just something that we've been talking about every day and trying to figure out how we're going to frame it and do this. So that this is going to be the show on Friday. We're also going to do, of course, After Dark Friday, but we just don't have it scheduled yet because we want to make sure we get this right. But there's a lot there, and it's a game changer. This really changes everything. And we've already had some discussions about it, and it's really quite shocking how much the importance of this. So we'll be discussing that on Friday. I hope you'll join us. If you haven't liked and subscribed, do that. Ring the bell, and you'll get notified when we have that come up. Come join us on our Discord. We've been discussing that and a whole bunch of other stuff. So Friday for that, when we really can take the time, it's gonna take a full hour, maybe more, to discuss it. So. Having covered all that, the U.S. Supreme Court has weighed in for the first time on statewide vaccine mandates and has declined to block a vaccine requirement by Maine. Maine was requiring its healthcare workers to get the COVID vaccine. There was an attempt to get the Supreme Court to block that. The Supreme Court refused. Maine already requires measles, mumps, rubella, chickenpox, Hep B, and influenza vaccines for its workers. This does not affect the state of nationwide mandate, which again we will be discussing tomorrow, Thursday the 21st at 9 p.m. with Nate the Lawyer, and we will be discussing explicitly. Can you do a nationwide mandate? What would be the limits of it? And what we believe is Biden's telegraph that he is seriously considering it. Meanwhile, U.S. regulators have approved mixing vaccines and boosters for Moderna and Johnson & Johnson shots. So you can get a first of one and a second of another, or a booster from one of the others. Also, oh dear Lord, I have to tell you, Joe, it hurts just to say this. Miami private school has ordered all students who get a vaccine against COVID to stay home for 30 days as, quote, a precautionary measure. They have said, quote, this is because of the potential impact on other students and our school community. Vaccinated students will need to stay home for 30 days post-vaccination for each dose and booster they receive. The letter argued that this will be because to cover the amount of time for the potential transmission or shedding of, shedding of the disease onto other people. The CDC has said that this is one of many misleading or erroneous claims about COVID-19. There are vaccines that in fact can shed, but all of those vaccines use the live virus. None of the vaccines approved in the United States use the live virus. None of them can shed. None of them can infect anyone else. CDC has said, quote, none of the vaccines authorized for use in the U.S. contain a live virus. One of the school's founders has said that this was just a precautionary measure and that a, quote, number of anecdotal cases have been in circulation. And the school, hold on one second, and let's see. The school would prefer to err on the side of caution when making decisions that regard that impact the health of the school community. The school also, earlier in the year, had asked teachers to not get COVID-19 shots, and they have said, quote, we're not anti-vaxxers, we are just in favor of safe vaccines. Meanwhile, Dennis Prager, I think it is it Prager? Is that, or is it okay, Prager, has gotten COVID, and he has now announced that he did so deliberately. He is now broadcasting his show from home, and he says that for the last year and a half, he has been deliberately engaging with strangers, constantly hugging them, taking photos with them, knowing that I was making myself vulnerable, very susceptible to getting COVID, which is indeed, as bizarre it sounds, what I wanted. I just have a picture of this guy running around hugging everybody he can meet. This would achieve the natural immunity that would otherwise be taken care of by therapeutics. It's a more natural way, and I'm glad, and this should happen to a majority of Americans. He's also said that the disease is not all that bad. I tested positive last week, and I've been steadily improving. At no point was I in danger of hospitalization. I have received monoclonal antibodies. Those are the ones that cost, I think, like $5,000 a shot or something like that, and certainly are not being made available to every American because there is no socialized medicine. I said that's Regenicon. I have, of course, for a year and a half been taking hydroxychloroquine from the beginning. With zinc, I've taken Z-Pak, zithromycin. As the Zelenko protocol would have it, I have taken ivermectin. I have done what a person should do. Dear God, we'll get back to that one. Meanwhile, the House Majority Leader has said that the House has announced that there will be a full vote. It has passed the committee, and there will be a full vote on Thursday for contempt of Congress of Steve Bannon. The Select Committee has voted 9-0 to pass that on to the House. The House will vote on it tomorrow. It is believed that the vote will pass. Senate Republicans have blocked the, quote, Freedom to Vote Act, which would have created automatic voter registration system, which would have happened through each state's motor vehicle agency. It would have made Election Day a public holiday and provided voters with at least 15 days of early voting for federal elections. It also had mechanisms designed to curtail gerrymandering of congressional districts and would have put in a new campaign finance disclosure requirement, which would have required that super PACs and other outside groups report their donors. This bill failed 49 to 51. It would have probably been 50-50 if it had a chance to pass, but then it would have not passed a filibuster. So at this point, it looks like the bill is dead. Let there be no mistake, said Senator Schumer. Senate Republicans blocking debate today is an implicit endorsement of the horrid new voter suppression and election subversion laws pushed into conservative states throughout this country. Why aren't my colleagues outraged by these laws? Meanwhile, let's see, I just want to make sure. Meanwhile, the political pundit Titan Uranus has said, quote, they should just get, open quote, we're trying to destroy democracy, tattooed across their foreheads. It would be less obvious. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell has said that the bill was aimed at giving Democrats an advantage in future elections, plowing taxpayer money into federal campaigns for usurping state authority over issues like voter identification. Quote, for multiple years running, Washington Democrats have offered a rotating merry-go-round of rationales to explain why they need to federalize voting laws and take over all of American elections themselves. And that's the rundown. So, yeah. Where do you want to begin? All right, hold on. They're reporting they can't hear you. This says you should be audible. So let me. Oh dear Lord. All right. You should be audible now. I don't know how that happened, but so you were saying our first discussion is on that school, and they know better. They've been informed. Yeah. I think
Yeah, they've been informed. They know this isn't true. That basically there's no virus, live or dead, in this vaccine. There's an RNA copy of a spike. That's on the by basis of the proteins that make the spike on the virus, and in no way could you possibly catch COVID from this, and they know that. So this is just punitive. They're just trying to attack people who got the virus. This is just being vindictive, and they want to, they put it out there in this guise of just being cautious. The cautious thing is vaccine mandates. The cautious thing is where everyone wearing masks, who can. Everyone who can get a vaccine to get one. Everyone who can wear a mask to wear one. That's the cautious thing to do. But so this is just disingenuous, and it's kind of infuriating. And especially now, the CDC has come out and clarified, and they're still going to do it anyway, which tells me that they don't really care what the truth is. They want to push this agenda.
Well, and this is a school. I mean, this is a school. They're supposed to, these are teachers. They are responsible for educating our children. And one of them says something as moronic as, we want to err on the side of caution. Are the vaccines perfectly safe? Nothing is perfectly safe. Nothing is 100% safe. But compared to the alternative of leaving yourself vulnerable to COVID, they're 1,000 times safer. I don't even know where to begin with that one. It's a school. It's in Florida. Big shock. I don't even.
The other one that it kind of dovetails off of this is Dennis Prager.
Yes.
You gave the list of the things he's on, and it's okay. He's on of some things that actually could potentially help. But then Z-Pack and a few others you mentioned, azithromycin, these are antibiotics. Antibiotics are not going to do anything against any virus. So that just shows how ridiculous. Now, in his case, I think he is that dumb. I don't know if you've ever watched any videos from PragerU, but basically it's just a nonstop, litany of ridiculousness and pseudoscience and religion dressed up as science. It's the thing that bothers me about it, because again, people that he's doing this for, they don't understand any of this stuff, that they will basically look at, just say if he gets through it fine and he survives and has no long-term after effects, then they take from that, oh, well, see, it's not a big deal. Oh, well, you can just take these things. And which of course is an anecdote. No one has ever said that you get COVID, it's an instant death sentence.
Yep.
No one has said that. But, although we've seen, based on the death rate compared to the case rate has actually been about 3%. They keep trying to pull out 1%. It's been about 3.5%. So no one said it's an instant death sentence. But the fact is that I remember seeing a stat a while ago, 1/3 of everybody who's recovered that we know of has some sort of long-term, effects on, either on their lungs or their heart. And so this push to try to minimize it after a year and a half, over a year and a half of this, with we're closing in on 800,000 deaths. And it's all for politics. It's not for any actual. It doesn't serve any actual purpose. It's just people that they're just bitter about the whole thing, and then so they want to, and then they just want to sit there and laugh and how foolish the libs are and all that.
Yeah, well, and with Prager, I mean, the other thing that's worth noting is, Titan put this in, he basically threw the entire arsenal at it, right? Even the stuff that we already know doesn't work, but at one point, one idiot said, "Oh, I'm sure it does," and it turned out that the tangerine was wrong. But he throws all of this at it and then says, "See, I'm okay." And it's sort of like when the president, when Trump got this, and first of all, we've since learned that he was really not even close to okay. He was actually very, very ill. But he's president of the United States. Every single thing we have at our disposal medically to keep him alive was thrown at him. Right. The fact that he survived does not impress me. It does not, in my view, accurately reflect the chances of an average person of his particular physical makeup of surviving this. And, it's the fact that, and that's one of the reasons why I quoted what he was, he literally went off bragging about all the stuff he's on and then says, "And see, I'm fine." Oh, Jesus.
And as you said, a lot of people, that one drug in particular, the antibodies, the average person doesn't have access to that. So even if that were some magical cure that would prevent people from dying and from long-term effects, most people don't have access to it. So saying it exists is like, okay, that's nice, but it basically means if you're really wealthy, you'll survive, and if you're not, you're pretty well screwed. What gets me about it is that the fact that they hid how sick that Trump had gotten. There was an opportunity for him if he actually cared about everybody. He could have done a 180, say, "Hey, I didn't think it was that bad. I got sick, and man, I was on the verge of going out. It wasn't for those doctors. So you go out there and, hey, I did Operation Lightspeed to get us that vaccine. And so you go out there and get it now." And he could have actually done something somewhat heroic, but he didn't have it in him.
No, well, he didn't, and he wouldn't admit, of course, that he really got sick because he wants to project this, and all he had to do was I think I love the way you say it too. Is he could have A, been a little heroic himself, and B, could have talked about heroes like doctors who helped keep him alive and said, "Okay, let's make their lives easier by doing our part." It's
right.
Somebody was talking about somebody had asked why the U.S. is basically the only country in the world that's really fighting these mandates. And somebody had said it's because we are an entitled country. We're so used to having everything handed to us, and we don't sacrifice that any imposition at all. We're like, well, no, that should really be put off on someone else. And I was thinking about that in the medical field, where we're sitting there going, oh, we'll let the doctors save us. That's why we have the medicine. If I get it, it'll get taken care of. And then we look at hospitals that lose the entire oxygen system, their internal oxygen system, because they're using it so much, the pressure has dropped so much that the pipes freeze. The pipes freeze, and then the whole system locks up, and then people who need a ventilator for something even non-COVID related now doesn't have air. Right. It's selfishness on a level that I'm not entirely surprised by, because that is what you get when you have a country that is as entitled as ours. And I'm gonna little humble brag. No, this isn't. This is just a brag. Our country has earned some of that. Our country has been very successful in some ways. So you know what? Props to what we've done well. But we like to act like we've done everything well. We've never screwed up. We've never committed genocide. We've never attacked innocent civilians. We've never. And you know what? We are pretty much just like every other country on the planet. When we have some good sides, some bad sides. Let's take some credit, but let's also sit there and say, when it comes to working and trying to fix these you know what? You know what, Joe? I'm a little tired. I'm gonna take a nap. Why don't you just finish the show for me? I'll see you tomorrow. We'll have a latte as the world burns. Yeah. I mean, it's just yeah.
Well, the thing especially about it is that somewhere along the line we confused the hype man for the artist. So yes. So you just got to go out there and have all the hype. and we you bang the drum louder and you jump up and down louder, and that's a substitute for actually being good. And I remember saying even a long time ago, if you have to tell people how cool you are, you're probably not that cool.
And we've got a question here, and this is well, we've had a couple of good questions, but I did want to bring this one up, and I guess then she's asking earnestly. I would not have guessed that, but I will put this up from Maya. Does Trump have the ability to think of anyone outside himself? He does, but not in the way that you're asking. He is absolutely a malignant narcissist. I have zero doubt in my mind. I'm sorry, I understand. Listen, we have that as a cultural term anyway, so I think you get to say that. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not qualified to, but give me a break. He has no empathy. He does not see other people as real individuals. He does think of people outside himself, but only if they can serve him. He is delighted to pat somebody on the back and say, oh, this guy's doing a hell of a job. Thank God he's here. He's great. He's awesome. But only if he's getting something in return. So he thinks to himself, what does this guy need or want? And he's a consummate salesman in that way. He's more than happy to sell his BS to and on behalf of other people, so long as he's getting something back. And to that end, he is actually thinking about other people, but he's thinking about, how do I manipulate them? How do I get them to do what I want? He's aware they exist, but only as tools, only as methods to his own ends. He certainly doesn't believe women exist he's a solipsist. We should have him on the show. He doesn't think that anyone exists outside of his own. Yeah.
Others only exist as in terms of their utility to him. And what gets me is all these people who kind of kowtow to him because they think they're going to get somewhere. And eventually, every single one of them, he stabs them in the back or pulls the rug out from under them when it becomes convenient to do so. Every single one. And you think that the current one would learn from the 50 before them, and they don't ever learn.
Yeah, well, and that's because, despite his lack of empathy, he knows how to connect in a way that makes people think he's being genuine. And it's a skill he's learned. Some narcissists can do it. Most can do it. Some can't. But there's a reason, by the way, they can do it. If they couldn't have done it, there's a reason sociopaths and psychopaths tend to have 10% higher IQ than the average population. It's because nature selected for that. Those that didn't have it were kicked out of the tribe and died. Their genes couldn't propagate. So the only way for people who were sociopathic to survive was if they were smarter than everybody else and could hide it. Narcissists, less so, same thing, though. So you get the narcissist is unusually charming and very good at making you feel like you are the center of the world while they're talking to you. That's what they do.
Yeah. Now, one of the other stories that I'd like to jump on, mostly because I saw Maya had a comment about it. So the Supreme Court didn't knock down that lower court ruling about the mandates. So that's good to a degree, but the one problem with it is that by not ruling, it doesn't become the law of the land. Basically, what ends up happening is in that circuit, that's the rule. And it hasn't been ruled unconstitutional, so it basically remains unsettled elsewhere, which means that challenges in other districts can still move forward. So it means that the taxpayers have to spend more time defending basically something that we've already done several times in the past and we already know meets constitutional muster. And this is unfortunately a tactic now that's been happening. This certainly happened back with the Texas abortion law. So by not ruling, basically they didn't rule on the constitutionality either way. So it basically leaves, in that case, and since no one had knocked it down, so it stands on the books. It could be, and I think a lot of us believe that it's completely unconstitutional, but because they didn't rule on it, it stands. And of course, the Texas Supreme Court was going to rule in its favor because it's all stacked with right-wing stooges. So the only way to get it knocked off would be to get the Supreme Court to rule. So they know, basically the conservatives on the bench know they would probably have to rule against it, and they don't want to, so they let it stand. And so in this case here, they would probably have to affirm it, and they don't want to. So they let it stand. They'll let Maine do it, and basically they said that will become the precedent in that court district. But basically they purposely left it unsettled elsewhere. So that's the reason why, to answer Maya's question, that's why they don't want to say yes, because then that undercuts all the arguments that anybody else has. If they say it's constitutional, then they would have to find a different ground than what was used in the main case to try to challenge it. Because if it was the same grounds and those grounds were ruled constitutional, then everybody else has to go away.
Well, my hope is, and again, with Nate tomorrow, and I forgot, I do want to ask him, because he did a recent rundown, too, of some of the major Supreme Court cases coming up, including a Roe v. Wade decision, which, I will be honest, does not look good. It looks, there's going to be, at a minimum, a 4-4 split, and the question is, who's the fifth and where does it go? But it looks like they're going to make some kind of curtailing of Roe v. Wade. Doubt they're going to overturn the precedent, but they may say, well, yes, you can limit it somewhat based on the number of weeks and yada yada. We'll see, but it's hard to imagine. The court's been stacked conservative. There isn't enough liberals on there to prevent it, so we'll see what happens. But we're going to find out soon.
And not to relitigate 2016 again, but I have to go out there to all the people who, didn't feel that, stopping Trump was important enough to go out and vote, for a candidate that actually was numerically feasible to win. And I warned everybody at the time, and I was all told, no, that's not going to happen. Well, he put three judges on the court, and now it's 6-3. And we're going to see a lot of bad rulings, either in this case, either a lot of like what you're talking about, where it's going to be a bad ruling, or a lot of no rulings to basically allow conservative states to run rampant over people's rights. And that to me was way more important in that election than policy and who was going to be president and all that. Was the Supreme Court was always the more important thing, because now we're stuck for a generation.
Well, yeah, I think it was awfully pie in the sky to say I might vote for a third candidate because I want real change. Xander! I don't know anybody who... Xander! Oh, jeez. Got to get rid of that cough. Who might have... I'm sorry.
Well, and the thing is that, those third-party candidates may want change, but they have absolutely no apparatus in order to make that happen. So it's a pipe dream. I mean, and what pisses me off about third parties isn't, well, I mean, some of them are kind of nuts, but even the ones that I think are reasonable people, is that they don't focus enough on local and state elections. If they were to build up grassroots from the ground up, then we could actually have some viable alternatives. Running for president every 4 years and kind of missing the trick on most of the other elections is never ever going to accomplish anything. Because even if you, through some miracle, everyone gets pissed off and decides to vote third party without support in Congress, your agenda goes nowhere. As we're seeing now, Biden has a 50-50 Senate and he has a slim majority in the House. He still can't get things done. Because even if we could get the recalcitrant, Sinema and Manchin to go play ball, there's still a lot that could not be done because as long as the filibuster exists. So that's just a fact, and that's just mathematics. And no amount of wishful thinking is going to make that different. Which is why when people talk about, we should do a constitutional amendment, I'm like, wow, we can't even get basic stuff passed. You really have no idea how this thing works.
We can't even do the must-pass legislation. I mean, how many times have we sat here and freaked out about the debt ceiling, which 10 years ago, if 10 years ago you said there was going to be an argument over the debt ceiling, and that there was going to be anybody who was a little more. So it was before Mitch McConnell first pulled it, which I think was that was less than 10 years ago. So 10 years ago, you say that, and people on both sides would have said anybody who does that is un-American. They're crazy, and it's the dumbest fucking thing you can do. And now we've faced this how many times, and we're going to face it again in December because we just kicked the can. This
is where we're at, right? We have a hard time keeping the government open, and you're talking about like I would love to get rid of the electoral college. Well, there's a way to do it, but it requires work, and it's going to take probably 2 decades minimum to make it happen. So, but that's again, we were talking about before about selfish. People just I want it to change now, but I don't like this rule. It's a bad rule, and I agree it's a bad rule. So so let's make it should change. And then, of course, when they don't see it change, they assume the result is intentional. It's very much, even among atheists, it's very much in a way of religious people, the way that they give agency to everything. Even things that are it's just like a child does. Oh, I got shocked by the outlet. Oh, it bit me. It didn't bite you. It's an inanimate object. But so they look at the result and not the process. Same thing. Okay, well, this is one actually topic you didn't mention, but actually you did. You mentioned Bannon.
Yep.
So I had friends of mine going off like, what are the Democrats doing? Why haven't they done anything? Like, well, because there's a process. So the committee voted yesterday and said, yeah, contempt. Now it goes to the full floor, as you said, tomorrow. And then if that happens, then it goes to the DOJ. Then they have to make a decision. And if they make a decision to proceed, then it goes to a grand jury. So it's not like they can just snap their fingers and make things happen. I know it's frustrating that it takes time, but it does. And, you can complain that the process sucks or whatever. That's the process we have. So, you can complain about the process, or you can get out there and try to make the process different by voting and by direct action.
And I'm not even, for me, I don't understand why we didn't eliminate the filibuster. It looks like we had an opportunity. I think they tied it, though, to the debt ceiling. They said as long as the Dems agreed not to to eliminate the filibuster, and we had the votes to do it, as I understand it. Now we don't. At least eliminated procedurally. They would pass the legend. No, you have to get rid of the filibuster because that's how we're getting murdered. And that's the whole point of a democracy, right? Is that the majority wins, and the filibuster turns every single majority vote into a supermajority. And it's not tenable. The government was not designed to operate this way. And oh, dear Lord. All right. Well, so, and actually, I guess there's 2 remaining. I know you had one about Trump, and there's one about Trump I want to bring up that I was just made aware of. But, and then also, okay, wait. So it was the House majority. There was one other thing, I think, that now I've spaced what the, let's see. Oh, yeah. How could I have forgotten about this? The Freedom to Vote Act. So, and a lot of this, the Electoral College favors Republicans, and it does so for a number of reasons. We've done a couple shows on this, and that's one reason why and in fact, in every instance that I'm aware of where a person won the majority vote but lost in the Electoral College, it was a Republican that won in the Electoral College and was able to take the presidency from the democratically elected candidate. So this Freedom to Vote Act, it would allow automatic voter registration through the DMV or RMV of each state. It would make Election Day a public holiday, which I have never seen anyone, that's not true, I've almost never seen anyone against it. It would allow 15 days of early voting and I saw Jake Forty had a question about this, but I didn't quite understand it. So Jake, if you want to put that question in again, and was designed to curtail gerrymandering, which, by the way, even the Dems do. Republicans happen to be a lot better at it and have been more successful with it, but and far more aggressive. So I do understand why they'd be less inclined. But at any rate, even they've said we've got to stop gerrymandering. Wow. And would require super PACs to release a list of their donors. So this died. Any thoughts?
I'm sorry, I got distracted.
That's all right.
About the bill. Well, yeah, but basically, I mean, and again, this is another part of it where I'm gonna jump back into the both sides are the same people, which really drives me insane. So people will look at that and they'll say, "Oh well, the Democrats didn't get that done, therefore they didn't want to," which is ridiculous. But every time people want to say this, both sides are the same crap. If you want to say both sides are bad to some degree, yeah, I'll agree with you there. But the idea that they're equally bad, or that the differences are inconsequential, one party put a bill forward to enhance voting rights, and one party, and a different party, stopped it. And so for all these fucking people that want to go, oh, both of you do the same. Yeah, bite me, because it's so goddamn infuriating, and especially since minorities especially get angry at white people who are progressives and liberals and all that, because as a black person, you know, they're coming after all of our votes, but especially darker people. And so I kind of feel let down. Like, again, Jake D, you know, mentioned the fact, you know, that Biden had some questionable things like in 1972, and that's why black people shouldn't vote for him. Well, it was actually black people who voted for him, which is why he won. And it was white people that brought this shit up, and I'm really fucking tired of it. Because we're the ones that are worse off. All these things, a lot of these gerrymandering and a lot of this, the restrictions are going off because black people showed up in large measure this last election, and they're trying to, and that's where most of the places are getting closed down, because black people are a fairly reliable voting bloc for the Democrats. So I'm sick and tired of being let down by supposed progressives who, you know, they just, you know, they're so concerned about the rest of us, and they leave us hanging when the time comes. But yeah, so this idea that both sides are the same. The Republicans are doing around the country trying to stop people voting, and this act was supposed to stop all that, and it got stopped in the Senate again because of the filibuster. We know, because of the filibuster. But you know, the people are going to take the wrong message from this, because they want to believe that, oh, it's both sides, and so you know, be proprietary and go off and be your third party and all that bullshit.
Here's a question. I do you think it would have passed? And I have to believe it would have had a greater chance of passing if they did not do the early voting for federal elections, which I think we need, but if we drop that, at least and do this piecemeal. It's always done piecemeal. You can't usually just pass, you know, these huge things. They're always done piecemeal. Get the national holiday, which is an absolute, I mean, we have to have that. Everybody can register through their DMV. It's still by the state. The states can do their own requirement, but it's through the DMV, and everybody, as soon as you get a license, at least it doesn't solve all of the voter registration problems, but boy, does it make it a lot easier. And then, what is it? I think there was one more that you know, I think sort of everybody can agree on. Could they have passed that even, do you think? And why didn't they go for that?
No, because if the Republicans were actually willing to go that way, they would have offered amendments to that effect, and they didn't. See, that's the thing that, again, people have to look and watch the process, because that's how it's always worked in the past when there was actual bipartisan compromise, is that, you know, one party would put out something out and say, okay, well, these are the things we object to. And then in some cases you say, okay, we're going to put some amendments, and then they would sit down and say, okay, well, we'll trade this for that, and eventually they'd come up with a bill. If the Republicans actually wanted this bill or any portion of this bill, they would have put amendments to strike out the parts they didn't like. They made zero attempt to do that or participate. So that tells me that they had zero, and there was no way this bill is going to pass. Even if they broke this up into individual bills, none of it would pass. And I'd make bank on that.
I think that's a good point about the they could have offered another. I mean, they could have said, here's our counter bill, and they just said, nope, we want it all gone. All right, so you had one more thing you wanted to talk about having to do with Trump, and then actually I have one more thing I want to talk about having to do with Trump. So let's what was it that you wanted to add?
Oh, well, yeah. Well, see, Westchester County is now investigating Trump on taxes at his golf course, or one of his golf courses, the one in Westchester County. So it's going to take a little while for that to go. It's early in the process, but you know, but yeah, the basically it's yet another thing that he's on the hook for.
All right. So what I think. I listen, you know, I've always said that, you know, I wanted this show to have cutting edge, you know, news stories. We've got a new one. Civilization has ended. So I would like to thank Joe for being with me here for the end of Civilization. Thank you to our audience. I did not expect when I started this show that it would be the end of Civilization, but it is. And I have as proof of that today, in fact, just hours ago, ABC and Salon and a few other sources are reporting Donald Trump has started his own social media organization. and he is going to be using this presumably to compete with Twitter and to fight back against, quote, big tech companies in Silicon Valley, which have used their unilateral power to silence opposing voices in America. Trump has said, let's see, I think I lost the, let me see, Donald Trump, the chairman of the new organization named Truth Social, which is now, by the way, available for pre-order in the App Store. Former President Donald Trump Jr. has said, quote, I created Truth Social and TMG, that is Trump Media and Technology Group, to stand up to the tyranny of big tech. We live in a world where the Taliban has a huge presence on Twitter, yet your favorite American president has been silenced. This is unacceptable. I am excited to send out my first truth on Truth Social very soon. TMG was founded with a mission to give a voice to all. I'm excited to soon begin sharing my thoughts on Truth Social and to fight back against big tech. Everyone asks me, why doesn't someone stand up to big tech? Well, we will be soon.
Well,
I had to verify this because this is, I hate it when you hear something this idiotic and you realize it's equally possibly true as it is a troll. Truth Social, founded today by Donald Trump to compete with Twitter.
Well, the thing I think is kind of funny about it, you say, oh, the Taliban is on Twitter and he isn't. I'm like, because the Taliban is less of a threat to American democracy than Trump. That's what's fucked up. That the previous American president is more of a threat to the American democracy than the Taliban. I don't include in that all of his supporters as well. They are also a threat to democracy. Didn't he start something like 6 months ago that flopped after like a month or two?
I don't remember, which means it's entirely possible.
There was some social media site or blog or something like that, and it went nowhere because, that's the one scary thing is that while he's the figurehead of this movement, they don't really need him anymore. He opened up Pandora's box and let out all the horrible. Hillary was right when she was wrong. She said it was a basket of deplorables. It was a big gaping hole into a dimension of deplorables, and that's what's opened up now. And we're kind of trying to stuff it back in the hole. And I mean, he's such a joke.
Well, and it's funny because Titan mentions this, and I was about to say this, but you do know what this would be translated to in Russian. The literal pravda. That's
pravda, yeah.
Pravda. Pravda is the word for truth in Russian. Their biggest propaganda source is a newspaper called The Truth. That's what it's called, Pravda. He has. It's sort of like when somebody did like a peace organization, and they're like, we're going to call it Armies of God. I was just like, yeah, do you know what that translates to? In what is it? I wanted to say Arabic. It's not Arabic, but it's that's what Hezbollah is. But Farsi, thank you. Armies of God is Hezbollah in Farsi. So I was like, you got to be a little careful. That and Bush's lightning war, which also doesn't translate into German particularly well. At any rate, your favorite president. We're not going to be, and he's going to send his first truth. That's what they call this. I'm not kidding. It's the end of the.
Well, the funny thing about it is.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, well, the funny thing about it is that previously I was calling Fox News TASS, which was, if anybody knows, that was the Soviet era state-run television news. That's right, so TASS was TV and Pravda was in print. So now we have both. So Fox News is TASS. And Pravda is so now Trump has his own Pravda. He literally just stealing shit from authoritarian regimes.
Okay, and now I've just seen this, and this I wasn't able to verify, so take it with a grain of salt. But this also just came in. So this You will be able to pay. Okay, so you can pay directly through the App Store or through checks written by your company on the back of a hooker's ass. Is that? That doesn't actually sound. I think I'm gonna. Can we get a verification on that? Okay, so we're not. I'm not retracting it because it is possible, but I'm gonna say I'm a little doubtful of that one. But the rest is true.
Yeah. I mean, it should be, even it's probably not true, but it should be.
Well, he's going to need it to be true. He's got to do it whether it's true or not. So they might as well just have the policy of accepting it because, quite frankly, we already know his history on that one. And I'm going to say something in all honesty here. Everybody makes mistakes. And if he decided to write a check out to a hooker from his campaign thing, he wouldn't be the first politician to have done that. And I've liked some of the politicians who have done that. So, you know what? There is this huge part of me that says we do need to take some of these things in stride. But when you take a look at the gestalt or the blitzkrieg of everything that this man has done, I just, no. He's lost any quarter that I would give him quite some time ago. So
well, especially since it's like, as I pointed out to people who in the past, there was a YouTuber called Rancan Campbell, and he was substantially Christian supposedly, but he was a real asshole, and he was even nasty to other Christians, and so he had supposedly. Well, he had done something to the user Losoyo, who's now Lore Reloaded, and basically he told Losoyo, "Well, God's forgiven me for that." And I'm like, no, because even when I was a Christian, one thing I remember from that is that in order to be forgiven for a sin, you had to stop doing it, or at least attempt to stop doing it. Because here he is saying this, and he's doing it again. Like, you're actively doing it right now as we speak. You can't be forgiven for something that you're actively doing on purpose.
And by the way, the reason he ran for president, I shit you not, is because of that correspondence dinner where he was there as a guest and he was getting roasted because of the utter joke it would have been if he had tried to run for president. He got so offended by it, he decided to do it just to prove he could. It actually worked. But then after he left, people said, "You're pissed about Twitter. Why don't you start your own social media?" And I was just like, no. It's I mean, yeah, of course he's going to think about it because that's just the way he is. But God does not have that warped a sense of humor. And here we are now. Truth.
Well, and of course he doesn't, and that would actually require some work on his part, and that's not something he does.
We're going to keep an eye on this. I have no idea. I mean, the reality is, What's It's is sort of half back up and running. That right-wing social networking site there, they have been sort of partially allowed back on different platforms. Responsible largely for the 9th, which we've also, the 6th, we've learned Bannon really had a lot more to do with that than anybody thought. And Trump knew about it ahead of time, too. We'll get into that. But at any rate, I think, wait, I was talking about I'm tired. You'll have to excuse me. I completely lost my train of thought. Well, let's see. So I think he did this because I just can't. I'm curious to see what's going to happen with it, but it's going to become a joke because it's called truth, and the one thing you don't need on it is an ounce of truth. There's going to be no policies regarding blocking any of this stuff except blocking what he doesn't want to hear. It's utterly insane. All right, so just as a reminder, we're going to be discussing tomorrow 9 p.m. Vaccine mandates. Whether or not you can, there's any precedent for a federal mandate, either just of federal employees or even every American as a whole, what that would look like and what the precedents are for and against. We're going to be discussing that with Nate the lawyer. We're also going to be asking him about the upcoming Supreme Court term. We also have tomorrow at noon, Derek Mythvision. He's going to be on to discuss addiction. He's been very open about his struggles with addiction, and we're going to talk about how he personally sort of deals with it and the consequences of how it affected him and people he knows, and what this means for, unfortunately, for the most part, everybody knows or has met somebody who's truly struggling with it. So we're going to talk about that. And then on Friday, we are going to be discussing the new Chinese missile system and what it means both for our nuclear deterrent and for the balance of power between the United States, Russia, and China. So a lot coming up this week, and we're still going to do our after show at 10 p.m. call-in show. Anybody wants to come in and discuss any of the stuff we've talked about, I think there's going to be a lot to discuss. We'll see you on Friday at 10 p.m. Hopefully, Joe, you can make it. Joe, thank you very much for coming and for your contribution as always. If you've gotten this far, hopefully you like the show. Please like and subscribe. It really does help us in the algorithm. Share the stream if you liked it. And we'll see you tomorrow noon for Mythovision. Anything else you wanted to add to that, Joe?
No, I'm looking forward to the discussion on the hypersonic missile. I have to still do a little bit more looking into it, but it's definitely something concerning. I think there's certain elements that are overblown, but we'll talk about that on Friday.
All right. So we will see you all tomorrow, and have a good evening.